Here you go, Miss Sparkle. Your package finally arrived. We're terribly sorry for all the delays on it, but I'm sure you understand, with all the holiday shipping we have to do, that it gets a little busy around here.
I was so worried I wasn't going to have it in time for Hearthwarming. You don't know how big of a relief this is.
Twilight sighed happily as she levitated the small brown box towards her. It slipped neatly into her saddlebag as she quickly signed the paperwork for it.
You have a wonderful Hearthwarming princess.
The postman tipped his hat before turning to help the next customer. Twilight turned and walked around the crowd of ponies that had gathered in the post office, all of who were there awaiting packages like her. She stepped out into the chilled evening air of Ponyville, her breath wafting up around her face. Her eyes looked toward the setting sun, watching its illumination fade over the horizon as it turned the sky a blazing orange. Up above, Pegasi were moving gray clouds into place, small speckles of white snow gently falling from them. The lights around town were starting to be lit, and soon all of Ponyville would be glowing. Twilight adjusted the scarf around her neck with a smile as she set off back to the library. Ponyville was alive with activity. Ponies rushing off to get last-minute items for gifts or meals, foals with their parents off to watch plays or visit family, lovers heading off to visit romantic spots around the town together. Twilight couldn't help but blush a little at seeing them, being reminded of her own plans for that night. It was going to be her first Hearthwarming spending time with her special Some Pony, and for that, she wanted everything to be perfect. It didn't take her long to return to the library so she could make final preparations for her date.
Spike!
Twilight called out as she opened the door.
You still here?
Not for much longer.
Spike called back from upstairs. Twilight chuckled a little as she took out her package and sent it upon the living room desk. She already had gifts wrapped up and waiting for each of her friends, but this last one had taken a while to get here, so she only had a short time to wrap it. She set to work removing it from the cardboard box and wrapping it with gift wrap. As she wrapped and decorated the gift, she could hear the padding of feet down the stairs behind her, and she turned to see Spike dressing for the occasion.
How do I look?
He asked, sporting a small black tux with mistletoe pinned to the front pocket, a bow wrapped around his neck like a bow tie, and a small wreath adorning his head.
Like a little present.
Twilight chuckled, raising an eyebrow at the little dragon.
Perfect! I'm planning to be Rarity's personal gift tonight.
Spike grinned proudly, adjusting his bow.
The illusion is complete.
Don't try too hard, Casanova.
Twilight shook her head softly with a smile.
You just need to remember to be yourself.
Yeah, I know. It never hurts to dress up, though.
Spike shrugged before heading to the door.
I'm heading out now. You enjoy your night with Big Mac too, Twilight?
The door slammed close behind Twilight, leaving her with a soft blush on her cheeks. Twilight turned back to her present and quickly proceeded to finish wrapping it up. She was going to meet Big Mac soon, and she wanted everything to be perfect. With a snug pull on the bow, she held up the gift and scrutinized it. The paper was perfectly flat around all the edges. The bow was symmetrical both vertically and horizontally, and the pattern was spaced out just right.
Perfect.
Twilight smiled, admiring her handiwork. She picked up a checklist that was next to the desk, marking off both pick up package and wrap present on it. She looked over the list, double-checking everything she had to do that day.
Seems everything is set. Once we're done with the date, we'll return to the library and exchange presents.
Twilight smiled, putting the list away.
So all that's left is to go meet Big Mac at 7.
Twilight turned her head to the clock, noticing it was 10 minutes till 7.
And I'm right on time.
Adjusting her scarf and saddle once more, she turned to the door and headed out to go meet Big Mac. Twilight walked through town square, quickly approaching their meeting spot. They had agreed to meet in front of the large hearth-warming tree in the center of town. A perfect spot to start off a romantic night. In the warm glow of the tree, it didn't take her long to spot the red stallion, awaiting her arrival with a plaid scarf wrapped around his neck.
Hey, Big Mac. Hope you weren't waiting for too long.
Twilight smiled, approaching him quickly.
Nope.
The large stallion replied with a smile.
Oh, good. I wouldn't want you waiting in the cold long for me.
Twilight chuckled a little.
So, what did you have planned for tonight?
Well, I was thinking we could go listen to the Hearthwarming concert playing by Town Hall. Or if y'all are hungry, we can go to this nice restaurant I know around the corner. There's also the local Hearthwarming pageant and Pinky's hosting a party.
Big Mac listed off the various activities he could think of for the night.
It's really up to you which you'd like the most.
Twilight blushed at that. She couldn't help but notice how Macintosh always seemed to put her needs first, always making sure what he was doing was okay with her. She really liked that about the caring stallion. Despite his large appearance, he was really quite sensitive. Twilight smiled, choosing what she wanted to do first.
Thinking about it, I'd love to spend some time listening to the concert with you.
Concert it is.
Big Mac smiled back, nodding his head in the direction of the concert before walking that way with Twilight. It didn't take them long to reach the Ponyville Orchestra Hall, near Town Hall. Several ponies were already gathered around. Some were dancing, some were simply listening, others were in small conversation. The two ponies drew closer and listened to the heartwarming melodies as they wafted through the cool night air. Though the air was chilled and every pony could see their breath, the wafting music seemed to bring warmth to the hearts of the ponies who listened. Twilight couldn't help but love the music that came with Hearthwarming. It reminded her of her days back in Canterlot, staying up late studying while listening to the carols in the city. So many memories of days gone by, reminding her of how things had changed over the years.
Heartwarming music is so beautiful.
Twilight murmured, smiling as she watched the performers playing, the ponies slow dancing in rhythm to the music.
Yep.
Was all Big Mac had to say in response. Twilight leaned against the bigger pony, feeling the warmth of his coat pressed up against hers. It was such a different feeling for her, spending Hearthwarming with a pony she cared about in this way. She certainly spent them with friends and family before, and it was plenty lovely. But just the two of them, spending the quiet night together as they listened to beautiful music. She couldn't think of anything better to do at that moment. Big Mac gently leaned up against her in return, sharing with her the moment. Twilight closed her eyes and listened to the music as she felt his warmth. It was going to be the start of a wonderful night. As the night drew to a close, Twilight found herself giggling with Big Mac as they made their way back to the library. They had spent the last several hours wandering the town together, listening to music, having a romantic dinner. They'd watched a portion of the Hearthwarming Eve pageant, and had spent some time at Pinky's party before heading back to the library for the last part of the night.
Pinky always throws such, interesting parties.
Twilight chuckled a little, approaching the front door of the library.
Yep.
Was the simple reply as Twilight opened the door and walked into the dark library.
Spike?
She called out as she lit up one of the torches for light.
You home yet?
Her question was met with silence.
Guess he isn't back yet. It's just you and me, Big Mac.
Twilight smiled at him as she walked in and started taking off her scarf. Her thought process halted for a moment, though. It was just the two of them, alone in her house, late on Hearth's warming eve. Her face flushed at the idea. She certainly wasn't intending for anything to happen, but this was her first time being alone on a holiday with her special sun pony. She'd read about encounters like this in her books. Everything starts out all normal, but then the boy leans in and makes his move, and suddenly the story starts leading to...
Twilight?
Big Mac asked, snapping her out of her thoughts.
What?
She said, turning to look at the large stallion standing next to her.
I said I'm gonna start a fire for us. I brought some apple cider and want to warm it up.
Big Mac explained, that ever-present gentle smile on his face.
Oh, sure, go right ahead. I'll just finish taking my winter gear off.
Twilight could feel her face blush before watching Mac turn and head for the fireplace.
Calm down, Twilight, calm down. Not every romance encounter ends up like one of Rarity's romance novels.
Twilight thought, shaking her head lightly, turning to look at Big Mac as he lit the fireplace. The fire sprang to life, silhouetting his large figure against it, seemingly magnifying each of the strong muscles that were hidden by his fur. The sight left Twilight stunned for a moment.
Even if this does look like a scene out of one.
She shook her head again and quickly unwrapped her scarf before slipping out of her winter saddle and boots. She stepped over to where Big Mac was, watching as he heated a pot full of apple cider over the fireplace. She took a seat next to the warm fire, feeling the refreshing warmth against her skin from having spent so long outside. Big Mac was warming the cider up to a warm stream before pulling it out from the fireplace and pouring it into 2 mugs.
It's a special blend my sister helps me make.
Big Mac explained, passing Twilight her cup.
Oh, thank you.
Twilight smiled, taking the cup and looking down at it. The warm cider was gently steaming from the cup and giving her a whiff of the aroma. It definitely had the usual apple scent to it, though she could swear there was a hint of cinnamon to it too. Bringing it to her lips, she took the first tentative sip of the drink. The drink was a warm mixture of apple and cinnamon, a sweetened concoction that was swirling around her mouth pleasantly. It went down easy and elicited a small of approval.
Oh wow, that's really tasty.
Twilight complimented as she took another gentle sip. The warm, sweet nectar was warming her insides and making her feel absolutely wonderful inside.
Hey, yup.
The 2 ponies sat comfortably before the fire, hearing it crackle and snap as the warm air heated the library. The warm cups of cider were shared between them as they enjoyed the quiet evening. Twilight was enjoying her time with Big Mac so much that she almost forgot about his present.
Oh!
Twilight said as she remembered, placing down her mug and turning to the center of the room, her horn lit up with magic, picking up the carefully wrapped package and levitating it to her hooves.
I got this for you, Big Mac. Merry Hearth's warming.
Well, thank you kindly, Twi.
Big Mac smiled, grabbing the present and placing it gently down before him.
I got you a little something too.
Big Mac said, reaching into his bag and pulling out a small, neatly wrapped present as well. He passed it over to Twilight, who gently took it into her hooves.
Merry Hearth's warming.
Twilight looked at the gift curiously, unsure of what might be inside. She traced her hooves around it, savoring the moment and looking for a good section to start unwrapping. Finding a loose edge of wrapped paper, she snuck the tip of her hoof under it and gently started peeling the tape and paper off of it. Slowly and carefully, treating the gift almost like it was china, she unwrapped the gift until it was free of its confines.
A journal?
Twilight asked curiously, looking at the intricate book she held in her hand. The binding was designed with a silver wrapping, jewels decorating the silver and accenting the purple cover.
I asked Spike if you had one of these, and he told me you didn't.
Big Mac said as he pointed his hoof to the silver and jewel-covered binding. He He smiled as he explained.
It's not a normal journal. I had to go to Canterlot to find this. It reacts to your magic and your magic only. Only you'll be able to open it, and you can even write in it without opening it. I thought it'd be something you'd like.
Twilight stared in wonder at her new journal. Her hoof ran over the cover of it, realizing that it could very easily become a private journal for her. Perhaps some kind of diary, or maybe if she wanted to work on a private project, or even if she just wanted to write a story without others being able to read it yet. It was a perfect hiding spot for her thoughts.
I love it!
Twilight beamed, a bright smile on her face as she brought the journal to her chest in a tight hug. It was a perfect gift for her. Big Mac opened his gift next. He wasn't as neat with opening the package as Twilight had been, though he noticed she had taken her time with wrapping it. Twilight hadn't given any loose edges for him to pry open, so he had to tear into the paper a bit. Moving the ribbon aside, he was able to carefully tear it open and let it slide out.
An apple for two?
He asked curiously, looking at the book that depicted two ponies silhouetted on a hill, overlooking an apple orchard as the sun set.
Yeah, I didn't see the book at your house, and Applejack said she didn't think you'd read it, so I thought you might really like it.
Twilight smiled, pressing her hooves together.
It's a historical drama that takes place during the Great Apple Famine of 682. It focuses on a small family on the east side of Philadelphia and their struggles during that time.
She was always so confident when talking about books. She pointed her hoof at the cover.
I even managed to get you the rare, limited edition of the book, which comes with the unique cover and an extra editorial section in the back. I even managed to get some connections thanks to being a princess to get the author to sign the book for you.
Twilight gently tapped her hooves together, blushing as she looked up at Big Mac.
Do you like it?
I love it, Twi.
Big Mac smiled, gently placing the book down.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm glad. I was worried I didn't find the right gift for you. I don't really know much about giving gifts. I mean, Spike's always complaining that I only give him books, but they're really the only thing I know how to give. They're just so good, you know? Everyone should be reading books. So full of wonder and intrigue, exciting worlds and lands, and so much knowledge. I just can't imagine what things would be like without...
Twilight?
Big Mac spoke softly, placing his hoof against her cheek. Twilight blinked as she looked at Big Mac from her stupor, seeing his smile.
Y'all don't have to worry. I love it.
Twilight stared into the large emerald eyes that were flickering in the light of the fire, seeming so strong and passionate yet simple and gentle. She felt her cheeks flush as she stared at him, the blonde hair rustically brushed across his forehead, the 3 white freckles on each cheek accenting his eyes, the big powerful jaw that made him look so strong. Twilight gulped a little, nerves rising but something else rising too. The large stallion was leaning in closer to her. She could feel his breath brushing against her muzzle. Her heart began to beat faster as his lips approached hers, and her face grew more crimson. His lips met hers, and sparks of electricity ran down her back. It wasn't the first time they kissed, but something about this kiss was different. It was somehow more intense, more passionate. Maybe it was that it was Hearth's swarming eve. Maybe it was they were alone in the library with a fire going. Maybe it was just that they wanted to express their love for each other. Whatever the case, Twilight's heart was beating loudly in her chest, and she didn't want it to stop. His lips were so strong on hers, almost like they were consuming her essence. She didn't mind, though. Her lips pressed back and opened a little, trying to kiss the strong stallion back. Their breathing grew heavier as their kisses grew more passionate, Mac's tongue slowly snaking its way into Twilight's mouth. She had never had a French kiss before. It was strange having such a strong tongue in her mouth, but he tasted heavenly against her. His hooves gently caressed her mane, as her hooves moved to rest against his chest. Twilight could barely hear the fire anymore, not over the sound of her heart beating in her ears. She found herself leaning back, Big Mac slowly pushing down on top of her. Her back laid against the floor and the kiss broke for just a moment. Twilight looking up into Big Mac's eyes once more as he smiled at her. the two ponies panting heavily in the fire-lit library.
Twilight, I'm home!
Spike announced loudly as the door swung open, the lights in the library snapping on. Twilight let out a cry of panic as she scrambled into a sitting position, Big Mac falling backwards onto his rump as a blush crawled onto his face.
Oh, Spike, you're home!
Twilight forced an awkward smile on her face as she patted down at her mane, her face completely red.
I wasn't expecting you home so soon.
Yeah, well, Pinky's party was winding down and Rarity was going to bed, so I decided to come back and spend some time with you.
Spike said, walking closer, stopping to look at the blushing ponies before the fireplace.
What's with you two?
What? Nothing's with us. What a silly thing to ask.
Twilight waved her hoof dismissively.
We were just sitting in front of the fireplace, weren't we, Big Mac?
Yep.
Was all the stallion had to say about the matter.
Well, if you say so, I'm gonna make a cup of hot cocoa and then I'll join you.
Spike smiled, wandered off to the kitchen to make his hot beverage. The pause in conversation gave Twilight a moment to try and calm her beating heart. She hadn't expected things to move so fast with Big Mac, images of Rarity's romance novels appearing in her head once more, as the stallion had been passionately kissing her in front of the fireplace. If Spike hadn't barged in, she had no idea just how far the two would have gone that night. Twilight felt a gentle nudge from Big Mac and turned her head to look at the stallion.
Thanks for spending Hearth warming with me, Twi. It meant a lot.
Big Mac smiled comfortingly, helping to ease the tension that was making Twilight's heart beat. Hearing his words gave her a comfort, and a small smile formed on her face.
I'm really glad I got to spend it with you too, Big Mac. This was probably the best hearthwarming I've had in a long while.
Twilight said honestly, still blushing as she spoke honestly.
You really made it special.
Glad I could.
He said, leaning over to give her forehead a kiss before wrapping his hooves around her in a hug. Twilight couldn't help but shiver and give a gentle sigh as she melted into the stallion's hooves. He really was too good to her. Spike returned shortly with a steamy mug of hot cocoa and sat between the two ponies on the fireplace. He shared the details of his night out with Rarity, and the three spent some time hanging around the fire before Big Mac finally needed to head home.
Well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow then?
Twilight asked curiously, looking at Big Mac from the front door.
Hey, yep.
He smiled at the bookish librarian he'd become fond of. He leaned in and gave her a parting kiss with a smile.
Merry Hearthwarming, Twi.
Merry hearthwarming, Big Mac.
She smiled, watching the large stallion turn and head through the night back to Sweet Apple Acres. In her heart, it truly had been an absolutely wonderful hearthwarming eve.